Welcome to the Build Exito and URISE Research Symposium. I'm Tom Keller. I'm the principal investigator for both Build Exito and the URISE program, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this event. The Research Symposium is an important milestone for our scholars. You get to share the impressive research that you've been doing over the past year. You gain skills in reporting and sharing your research, and it's great preparation for future conference presentations and maybe publications. So we have several groups with us today. On the Exito side, we have cohort 6 scholars who are just completing summer immersion. So they have been in their RLC placements for a year, and they will be reporting their research from the past year. We also have cohort 7 scholars who are just finishing up their summer induction, which means they're just beginning their RLC placements, and they get a preview of what it will be like next year when they're presenting at the symposium. And finally, we hope that we have many prospective cohort 8 scholars who may have attended the Summer Research Academy and are in the process of applying for Build Exito right now, so they can see more about what the program is all about and the kind of research that students do. So welcome to all of you. On the URISE side, we have cohort 1, our very first URISE scholars who have been in their research placements for the past year, and they're just coming off of an intensive summer research experience. So they will be sharing their findings with us. And we also have cohort 2 scholars in URISE who have just started their research placements this summer. So they've been in their RLCs for just a couple of months, but we asked them to do their presentations as well because we think it's good experience, and they will be sharing with us the research that they intend to do over the coming year. So another group I hope we have with us today. It would be wonderful to see research mentors who have supported and guided our scholars, and we really appreciate the opportunities that they're providing for our scholars, and we hope that you enjoy seeing and supporting your scholars during the symposium. And I want to also acknowledge some scholars that will be concluding the program soon or already have. First of all, Miriam Ibrahim completed with us in August, and Raisha Paris is completing Exito at the end of immersion, and Emily Mize is completing at the end of fall term. So congratulations to all of those scholars. I also want to thank people that are involved in making this all work, putting on this great event. So first of all, Dr. Decatur Foster has done an excellent job with summer immersion this year, supporting the scholars in preparing their presentations and posters. I also want to thank Dr. Shandy Dixon, who supported immersion, but also is responsible for induction this year. Of course, there are many other people involved in organizing an event like this, so I want to especially note Cassandra Ramirez and Sarah Taylor for helping to coordinate everything, and many others who have helped to pull this all together. So we're very excited to be together in person again, and I want to say finally, we are very excited about our event on Thursday. So again, the symposium will feature research presentations today, Tuesday, and then the first 2 hours on Thursday. But the last hour on Thursday, just before lunch, we're going to have a poster session and a reception with refreshments. And this year we've combined it with our annual kickoff event to start the new year. So we hope you can all be with us to celebrate. And we've invited many guests from around campus so that they can learn more about Build Exito and URISE programs and see the wonderful research that our scholars are doing. So again, we hope to see you all for that. And We hope you're having a great experience in the program, and we're so proud of all that you've accomplished, and we hope you enjoy the symposium. Thank you.
Okay. So Silali, we are going to turn it over to you. Welcome all, and yay, thank you for being great. We appreciate it.
Hi everyone, I'm Silali Vasquez. I'm at Dr. Lane's lab at HSU. And today I will be talking to you guys about our recent study, S3 test reliability of drug-induced sleep endoscopies. Okay, so a drug-induced sleep endoscopy, or a DISE, is a diagnostic procedure in which the patient is sedated and the flexible endoscope is advanced from the nose down to the upper airway. Usually this can help determine whether a patient has obstructive sleep apnea, or in some cases, it can also help determine whether they need treatment options or what is available for them. For those that do not know what sleep apnea is, it's a sleeping disorder in which the patient repeatedly stops breathing throughout the night. For this kind of study that we're doing, we have intra-rater and intra-rater methods that researchers typically use, meaning that the researcher is either one researcher or various researchers looking at a film and scoring it that way. What our study aims to do is physically reproduce the procedure and score it that way instead of watching the film and scoring it that way. On the right over there is a little endoscope equipment. It's a knobby thing. It will go down the nose to the upper airway. And down here is what the researcher or person that is gathering the information, that's what they would see bottom. And depending on the obstruction or how they see what is around the area, they can either mark it as very obstructed or not obstructed and score it from there. Okay. Right now, it's still unclear how variable the findings are from one exam to the other on the same patient. And with very little published articles to go off of, it's not very clear whether test-retest reliability for drug-induced endoscopies are reliable or they're not. The main objective with our study is to determine whether drug-induced sleep endoscopies, the test-retest, are reliable for both children and with adults. On the right over there, it's a little small to see, but there's a chart with what a researcher or a person performing the procedure would look for in determining whether there's an obstruction or there's not. So our study design right now is a retrospective cohort study, meaning that instead of working on it in the present time, we're looking back at historical data. In this case, we're looking back at their medical records. Our cohort at the moment is patients that are 2 to 17 and that have had a drug-induced sleep endoscopy at HSU. We're using, as I mentioned, the operative reports on their medical record. We're going on Epic, and we're just looking at the findings and also the results that were found by the person performing the procedure. After all that, we have to analyze it using Cohen's weighted kappa. So currently we are still in the process of gathering and extracting information. Since this project did start fairly recently around July. So we're still extracting the data and still a work in progress. Hopefully in the future, we can analyze and code that data that we have on the children and also work on extracting, coding, and analyzing the adult data that we haven't done yet. With this data, hopefully we can assess whether drug-induced sleep endoscopies can be reliable. And since there's not very many published articles out there about adults in children, it might help shed some light in that area. I would like to thank Build Exito, the staff, especially Dr. Proctor, I'm sorry if I butchered it, and also the advisors and my PI, Dr. Lamb and Eleni O'Neill, for helping me gather data as well as peer reviewing and editing my poster and presentation. Those are my references. And do we have any questions?
You are smack dab on time. Well done.
Oh my God, that was really fast.
All right, what questions do we have for Sidwell?
What's your target participant number? How many of these medical records are you reviewing?
Well, yeah, right now we chose the pediatric data since it's the smallest. It's currently around 100 patients, but the adult data is like in the thousands. So it's we chose to go with the pediatric data since it's a lot shorter and probably will finish it quicker.
Yeah.
And yeah, the adult one is pretty big. So yeah.
Any questions?
I will. What are some risk factors for sleep apnea in children? So I haven't heard of many cases, so I'd love to know more about pediatric sleep apnea.
So usually, one of the risk factors would be like obesity, any comorbidities that would be caused by obesity. Down syndrome is also a factor for sleep apnea since they have a condition called hypotonia, which makes it so they have less muscle mass around the neck, making it so that there's the kind of they stop breathing up, and since everything is kind of not very placeful. If that makes sense.
As a follow-up, I think I have a ton of bias related to sleep apnea. I'm thinking that older adults, I'm thinking of individuals who might have extra weight on their bodies potentially, or something along those lines. So I'm not thinking about it in terms of the pediatric population at all. So I had no idea that it even existed in younger kids. I don't know about others. What other questions?
Yeah.
I know that this is new research for you, but as how do you put your work in those exciting, surprising?
For this study, right? I guess just being able to look through the medical records, it's you can see all the correlations between the symptoms and like you can see their home life also. So you kind of you get a perspective of the patient for the study, and it's cool seeing how all the results kind of line up towards the end.
Yeah. Others. Well done. Thank you for everything. And so that is how it's going. So well done.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is John. I'm a student researcher here at Portland State University under Dr. Megan Gill's lab. And today I will be talking about the retrospective analysis of participant experience at Chat Retreat. Before I begin, I want to self-disclose that I am an adult who stutters. Okay, next slide, please. So, what is stuttering? Stuttering is a neurophysiological condition which impacts speech production and a person's self-perception as a communicator. So this image that you see right here, this is the iceberg analogy that we use to explain all this. So on top of the iceberg, these are the overt and visible aspects, which you can hear from my speech, which are the blocks and the repetitions. However, hidden under the water in the bottom of the iceberg, these are the emotions felt by a person who stutters, which usually consists of feelings of guilt, shame, isolation, denial, anxiety, and fear. And the aim of Chat Retreat is to replace the negative emotions and connotations with emotions such as resilience and strength. Chat Retreat. Chat is an acronym that stands for Community, Harmony, Advocacy, and Transcendence. It's a place where a person who stutter can learn to be a powerful voice in their community and to inspire positive change and break through the barriers associated with stuttering. So the participants in the 2018 retreat included 13 adults who stutter, 5 graduate student clinicians, 4 speech language pathologists, and in 2019, it consisted of 7 adults who stutter, 5 graduate student clinicians, and 2 SOPs. And this image here, this is everyone that attended back in 2018. So the activities that were done in the retreat, these activities were built upon to reflect the core values of the retreat. And this consisted of team building exercises, ladder activities, improv workshops, and goal writing. And in this images here, these are some of the examples that the participants took part in. And to measure our outcomes, the participants had to take an OASIS A and social connection skill questionnaire at the beginning and end of the retreat, as well as an interview that was conducted at the end of the retreat to ask them about their experience about it. So here are the quantitative results. The charts that you see here for 2018 and 2019 are the OASIS A. Each column represents a different section in the questionnaire, which can range from general information, reactions, communication in daily life, and quality of life. As you can see for both charts, the post-test mean has decreased from the pre-test mean. So this indicated a decrease of impact of stuttering compared to their arrival at chat retreat. And here are the qualitative results. These are statements and actions and emotions that the participants stated during their interview on the last day of the retreat. And as you can see, it made a positive impact on their lives. And to conclude my presentation, chat retreat participants reported an increased feeling of connections to others and a decreased impact of stuttering on their overall quality of life. So together with these results, it can be shown that improvements in communication attitudes can be done in a short period amount of time. And acknowledgements, I just want to thank all the participants who attended the retreat in the past years and the graduate students and the speech language pathologists who took time out of their summer to support this retreat, and the individuals who founded the retreat itself. And most importantly, the NIH Build Exito grants that allowed me to do my research on this. Thank you, and I have any questions.
What questions do you have for John?
What is one of your takeaways of doing your research?
Biggest takeaway, stuttering is okay. Because before I came into Megan's lab, I didn't know about acceptance of therapy. I thought I was try to be fluent in word switching, filler words, breathing techniques. So this, my biggest takeaway is like, accept it. You know, for me, I accepted that me and my stuttering were partners for life. So the sooner I get to accept that, quality of life just starts to become better. So.
I have one. So how did you recruit for this study?
Actually, so I was a comp sci major, and then I got accepted to build, and then I saw that Portland State offered speech and hearing sciences, and my stutter really was a part of me that interested me for like the longest time, even as a child. And I was like, I'll take this opportunity. I saw that I could work in Dr. Megan Migo's lab for my RLC, and I reached out, and that's how I got accepted.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to jump in if that's okay. So given your background in computer science and your research, it totally makes me wonder about like natural language processing, machine learning. And so I'm thinking about Stephen Bedrick, who is up at OHSU and does, full on analysis, usually how like, so So, all right, I have two questions. One is, oh my gosh. One is, how does that area of research align with your own interests?
So what we're doing now and my interest, I really wanted to dig deep into more of where learning is a completely separate part from speech and hearing sciences, and that's where I want to specialize in, especially because growing up, I didn't receive any type of a therapy, so it was always more of a see what works for you type deal. So with this, it works for me because acceptance therapy, I didn't think that was a possibility when I was a child. I thought, oh, you had to be fluent all the time. So reflecting back, I think it's something that I just wanted to push forward, that I wish more people who started knew about instead of trying to be fluent all the time.
Right, I have another question, but I don't want to, so does someone else want to go next? And then I will ask my next one after that.
So go ahead.
So as we are going through, so this is from 2018 and 2019,
Yes.
and it's a retreat. So even if it's not significant, you could tell things are generally trending in the right direction, small samples.
Yes.
So it immediately begs the question, you just came out of COVID, you're from NMC.
Yes.
So to what extent could something like this be implemented in an online, right? It's the COVID question, right? So how could stuff like this be used online to reach more people?
Yeah, so actually beforehand, in our lab, we were looking into telepractice, which is the delivery of a therapy online. So we can definitely push this online as well with other adults who stutter. But personally, coming from someone like me, I really appreciate personal connection. So we can, that is definitely something we can dig deeper into in the future. But for now, it's definitely an in-person experience.
What other questions?
Yes.
What's your next steps?
Next steps, well, we really want to get Chat Retreat back in 2023 after the past couple of years of the pandemic couldn't get that. So hopefully we could get more funding to bring it back. And some of our feedback from our past participants is a longer retreat because we measured how much change can be done in a short period of time, but we'll want to see how that affect in like a longer scale. And more participants initially, as I mentioned, our sample size was really small. Yeah, so.
Other questions? Well done, Jen.
Thank you.
All right, so hi everyone, my name is Chief Valencia, and I'm part of Dr. Puffer Supreme Physiology Lab over at HSU. All right, so the region I'm going to be talking to you guys about today concerns how androgen receptor neurons play a role in the regulation of circadian rhythms. So what is the circadian clock? So the circadian clock is simply a neurological system that governs physiological functions. The main regulator of the circadian clock is located in the anterior hypothalamus, known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SEN for short. So disruptions to this clock, as seen in shift work and jet lag, lead to an increased risk of health disorders such as metabolic, cardiovascular, or reproductive disorders. So how is the clock synchronized? As seen in the image here, we have the suprachiasmatic nucleus split up into a central core and outer shell region. In the central core, where androgen receptor neurons exist, it integrates several different input, the more common ones being light and hormones, which then go rhythmically out to the rest of the body. All right, so the key aspect of the SCN is for the suprachiasmatic nucleus is that it is able to respond to changing cues. An example would be adapting to jet lag after traveling far distances. And there have been publications showing that androgens change the phase shifting response of the SCN, but these are based only on hormone manipulation. So our specific goal is to examine if the androgen receptor neurons themselves are responsible for phase shifting. All right, so the way we're going to be doing this is we're going to be selectively targeting and activating the androgen receptor neurons pharmacogenetically using drugs. So drugs are simply the sign receptors exclusively activated by the sign of drugs. So as you can see in the cross-sectional image of the brain right there, we're going to be using an adeno-associated virus to inject the GQ cytokine drug into the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the mice spray. The specific receptor is going to be activated by a specific ligand known as CNO, and we will also be seeing vehicle treatments and mice with no threats as control groups. All right, so the preliminary, so the preliminary results that we have right now indicate CNO trips the clot in some mice. All right, so here we have two actograms of GQ, statutory no mice. Quick overview in actograms. So on the x-axis we have time, the y-axis we have number of days. Where all the days towards the top, your days towards the bottom. Lighted shaded areas with light conditions, darker shaded areas with darker conditions. Well, let's see, mice are typically nocturnal animals, so we expect for them to have more activity during dark conditions. And we can see that at the top of the first actogram when the mice are entering to a light dark cycle, most of the activity is in the dark phase. And this activity stays rather consistent throughout that phase, as you can see by the little green bars, I try to highlight the activity, and there's no change in period. However, when the mice are shifted over to constant darkness, the period shortens, resulting in this pattern like this. This is expected when they are placed in constant darkness, and it's also seen when we give them the vehicle. However, when we give them CNO, we still see a shortening of the period, as seen the little pattern right there. However, this shortening period is now delayed, as indicated by the red arrow. This is what is expected when we activate the GQ receptors in the androgen receptor neurons. However, this effect of CNO that we see here in this first actogram is not seen in the all mice. As we can see the next actogram, we see that CNO still displays the shortening of the period. However, there's no delay in this one. So what we need to do is we need to account for the differences that CNO appears to hold. So as I mentioned earlier, we use a stereotoxic injection to inject the SCN of the mice with the dreads. Here we see a bilateral hit on the SCN, and over there we see a bilateral miss indicated by the lack of fluorescence in the SCN core. The SCN is very small nucleus, so it's like pretty difficult to accurately hit it every time. So the ones that are misses are going to count for the ones for the behavior that we see no effect to CNO, which is probably accounts for the previous mice that had no influence by CNO. But yeah, so based on these preliminary results that we do have right now, we know that androgen receptor neurons are critical points in the phase shifting pathway. But one more thing that we do need to find out is the differences between males and females. So these androgen receptors are very prominent in males. However, the androgen receptor neurons are present in both males and females. That is seen in this figure right here, where we treated both males and females with testosterone. And then we saw that they both show the same neuronal expression. So by activating these androgen receptor neurons, we're going to be able to find out the specific role that they have in regulating circadian rhythms. All right, and then I just want to thank Bill's Exito, always just you, my PI, Matthew Butler, and IGA for helping out with the research. Thank you.
Right on time.
Yeah.
Right. What questions do we have? Agree. Yes.
Favorite part of the study?
Favorite part of the study probably was doing the immunohistochemistry and just like being able to cut the brains, actually visualize the brain and see what I'm looking at or what I've been looking at the whole time. It's pretty cool, I think.
There's something really peaceful. Did you get to do the slicing?
Yeah, that was nice. We used to process that machine. It was a bit time consuming, tedious, but yeah.
But then you get to keep that.
Yeah.
I have one.
You go first and then Steph.
Okay. If you had to explain this study to a layperson or someone totally outside of science, how would you explain this?
All right, so we're just using genetic technique to activate the neuron, not activating it through the androgen receptor. We're just activating it through a different pathway using something known as threads. And
Okay.
we're trying to see what that effect has in circadian rhythm.
Great.
That's the basic overview.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. I may have missed this on the slide, but what was your sample size?
Yeah, I didn't include in the size. There was a lot of information that didn't include the size. So the sample size was 113 and it included 2 cohorts. And we also experimented on GI threads, which are inhibitory threads. However, I didn't have enough time to include this and other information, but yeah, that's the sample size.
So when you presented the actograms, the one that has the shifts and everything, like that data is intense. It's overwhelming. Like regardless, not your data, just that data, circadian data is intense.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about like the analysis of how you either analyze circadian data or like that process of learning how to analyze it? Because it's not trivial.
Yeah. So yeah, it took me a while to like learn how to read. I learned my PI actually gave me a whole book to read. So yeah, it's just there are activities based on these little things you see here, and it's measured. Each mice is housed individually in a cage, and their activities measured using a running wheel. It's connected to this sensor that connects to the computer. It's just a lot of things. Basically, we just go inside and check what their activity is every day. We clock it in. At the end, we produce this nice like kind of weird data. And yeah, and then at the end, we just like correlate and see any patterns. Usually, sometimes it can look a little weird, and I try to choose the cleanest set, the little line, so I can like show you guys. But yeah, something can look weird. But yeah.
So I guess my follow-up question to that is like, so you said that you love the beginning of chemistry.
Yeah. That's
How do you feel about the analysis of some of the data that comes from this outside of it? It's challenging, it's hard.
Yeah. It's definitely something that we're still like doing, like we're still not done like completely analyzing both the IHC with the behavior, so we're studying it quarterly yet. However, yeah, it's gonna be time consuming. Yeah, that's pretty much like basically on that.
Right. Organize nice trials. Can you explain?
Yeah, it's incredibly because many people experience shift work. And as we know, shift work can result in a lot of health disorders, cardiovascular, reproductive, especially reproductive, and metabolic disorders. Being able to identify a pathway can help us find out, being able to identify the mechanism that causes these shifts can enable us to find new therapeutic ways to be able to implement in treatments and treat.
Today, good morning. My name is Donna Reyes. I work with Dr. Nora Gray, the Gray Lab at LSU. And in this study, we're investigating the role of NERV2 in A beta pathology in an Alzheimer's disease mouse model. So for context, Alzheimer's disease, or AD, is a very common disease, and it's characterized by extracellular beta amyloid plaques and intracellular tau table administration there. Additionally, you can also see oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, and neuroinflammation, which are thought to contribute to the neuronal degeneration, which is also depicted on the figure below. And because of this, our target of interest is NERV2. This transcription factor controls the cellular antioxidant response, and when activated, actually attenuates oxidative stress and neuroinflammation in mouse models of AD. So this suggests that it may be a useful therapeutic target. However, as the normal function of NERV2 in the pathogenesis of AD is not yet fully explored, the development of NERV2 targeting therapeutics has not been fully developed. Therefore, our overall goal for the study is to determine how the loss of NERV2 affects an Alzheimer's disease mouse model. The beginning stages of this project, which I will be talking about today, focuses on the initial steps to determine how A beta pathology is affected over time in a 5x FAD mouse model that does not express NERV2. For experimental design, we use 5x FAD mice, and those mice are Alzheimer's disease mice model that overexpress 5 mutant human genes. So they accumulate A beta pathology. They show cognitive impairment as they age. They also show oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, and neuroinflammation. And as you can see, 5x FAD mice are bred with NERV2 mice that do not express, or mice that do not express NERV2 or NERV2 knockout. This will be compared to a 5x FAD mouse that does express NERV2. And as control, we also have NERV2 knockout mice that do not show any AD transgenes. Their brains will be harvested at different ages, and we will section those brains we section the brains into thin slices. We already did it, sorry. They were stained with antibody and microscopically analyzed. And in our results, as you can see, the A beta pathology increases as the mice age. It's those brown little speckles all over the brain slices there. And although it may be hard to see, it is quantified in these graphs, whereas you can see in the hippocampus and cortex, the particles per area increases with age, while the NRF2 knockout mice with no AD transgenes showed no particles per area because they do not get A beta plaques. Surprisingly, however, in the study, when we compared the 5XFAD mice to the 5XFAD mice that do express NRF2, they showed less A beta pathology in comparison. And in conclusion, we found that the A beta pathology is increasing both the hippocampus and cortex of 5XFAD mice that do not express NRF2 as they age. But interestingly, when comparing age-matched 8-month-old 5XFAD NRF2 knockout mice to age-matched 5XFAD mice, there was a reduction in A beta pathology. And this contradicts reports in literature, and it could be a result of our relatively small sample size in this initial study. Therefore, it will be important that we repeat the study in additional female and male 5XFAD NRF2 knockout mice. And for future directions, we will also explore the effects of the loss of NRF2 on the neuron inflammation associated with A beta pathology in the 5XFAD mice. And that is all. I'd like to thank my lab, PSU, OHSU, and especially this Build Exito for this opportunity.
Wonderful. We're on time, so we have time for questions. What questions do you have?
One thing that I didn't know before going to study that so basically I didn't know much about NRF. No, I knew a bit about NRF2, but as I was going through the study, I understood more about how it occurs naturally in our body, what it does to protect our cells. And I was just surprised by the study because of my results.
So relating to humans, how do humans lose function of NRF2? Is it something that?
Okay, so NRF2 is a naturally occurring transcription factor, right? We just removed the transcription factor in the mouse model to see how that would affect A beta pathology, whether that would change how the brain handles A beta pathology. Naturally in humans, I don't think we would see that NRF2.
So it's just to replicate the conditions
Oh,
have?
So did you also measure any behavior associated with this? Is it all pathology, or does it, correspond to certain like either memory changes or behavioral changes or other things in the overall system?
so we didn't exactly measure any cognitive changes, but then we did observe and see that the 5XFAD NRF2 mice were much worse than the 5XFAD mice that did express NRF2, and even the NRF2 knockout mice that didn't have any Alzheimer's disease transgene. They seemed regular as they were younger, but then as they aged, they got progressively worse compared to a normal mouse. Yeah, so it's important.
What questions do you have?
What would you see as the next step in this research if you were to take a direction you were interested in human applications? What would you see as the next step?
So afterwards, if we did deem that NRF2 was important in the protection against tau pathology and A beta pathology, then we would definitely look for therapeutics to target the expression of NRF2.
Well, one more, because I can't stop. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Occupational hazard. So you did all female mice. So
Yeah.
why all female versus male mice? So females have those circadian cycles we learned from Jesus before blood. I'm sorry, like where was that? Where was the sitting? So about circadian rhythm. So it of course makes me think of cycles and
So this is a pilot study. Yeah, so we only completed the female mice, that's why that's the only data I can present.
No problem.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we're still working on the male.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well done. Well done. Welcome back. So next up, we have Juliana Villanueva, and their presentation is IVY, estimating the effectiveness of SARS-CoV-2 vaccines and preventing the usage of invasive mechanical ventilation and in-hospital deaths in adults. So welcome.
Hello, my name is Juliana Villanueva Vargas, and on behalf of the PRISM Research Group of OHSU, the CDC, and other partnering hospitals, I am very excited to present to you all our research named IV3, which looks at the effectiveness of the COVID vaccines in preventing severe conditions of COVID in adults, such as IMV usage and death. The importance of our research begins on March 11th of 2020, when the World Health Organization marked the coronavirus as a global pandemic. Since then, there has been over 6 million deaths worldwide, and our research aims at reinforcing trust in vaccine effectiveness among the community when it comes to preventing severe COVID infections, such as IMV usage and death. Our first objective was to test the effectiveness of the vaccine and its ability to prevent severe COVID infections in adults. Next, we wanted to also look at the influence in which the number of doses received by the individual impacted the vaccine's effectiveness. Finally, we wanted to also find any similarities within the individuals who did experience severe COVID infections. We decided to separate our sample size into two groups called Cohort 1 and Cohort 2. Both cohorts consisted of adults above the age of 18 who were hospitalized and experienced COVID-related symptoms. However, the difference between both groups is that only Cohort 1 individuals were COVID positive and Cohort 2 were not. Once the distinction was made, we went on to consent the individual, which involved obtaining a superficial nasal swab and asking them a series of demographic questions. However, because this was an observational study, the majority of our data came directly from their medical chart, which involves the type of treatments they received. Our data shows that about 21.3% of vaccinated individuals experienced IMV usage and death, while the majority of them didn't. This resulted in a vaccine effectiveness of 90%. During our study, we were able to see both Omicron and Delta waves, and we used this as a comparison to see how the number of doses received by the individual affected vaccine effectiveness. And as we can see here, it is clear that receiving 3 doses conferred a greater vaccine effectiveness than 2. In an attempt to find a connection within the individuals who did experience severe COVID and were vaccinated, we managed to find an inverse relationship between the number of chronic conditions that the individual had and the effectiveness of the vaccine. And as we can see on the graph here, as the number of chronic conditions they had increased, the effectiveness of the vaccine decreased. To summarize, receiving 2 to 3 doses of the mRNA COVID vaccine conferred a vaccine effectiveness of 90%. Vaccinated individuals who experienced severe COVID infections tended to be older and were more immunocompromised than their unvaccinated counterparts. Our research reinforces the importance of staying up to date with their COVID vaccine doses to promote the health of our community. These are my references and the funding we received for our research. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me through either of these emails. Thank you.
So Juliana isn't with us right now, as I can tell. So as we were doing questions, I imagine this is going to be a conversation among us as we're kind of moving forward. So one of the things that pops up for me, so Donna, I'm looking at you. So with COVID, one of the things that popped up in the news recently is they're expecting that individuals who have had COVID are expected to have an 80% increase in risk for Alzheimer's disease, for example. So there's some of these co-relationships for this. So does your lab talk about COVID-19? I realize this is not your research, But like, as we're kind of moving forward and looking across our different projects, like, has your lab talked about COVID and the impacts on Alzheimer's down the road?
Our lab has not delved into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wouldn't go too much about.
Totally okay.
You can always look at literature.
Totally okay. All right, so with this, what's popping up for you? I know, what questions do you have, what are you noticing? Also, she was using flat icon, which is an awesome source for icons that you can color and insert into presentations. So,
Yeah, I really liked the structure of the presentation, the slide on the ends, you know, what do you know, why is this important?
Yeah.
That was a really nice structure.
I prefer the pre-recorded presentation to no presentation also, so now we can access this in as well. What is something out there? Questions, concerns?
I'm curious why the second cohort was chosen that didn't have COVID.
Yeah, I was wondering.
It seems like the control group should be having COVID as well, and maybe they just don't get the vaccine. I'm curious about that.
Both recruiting study population, like which recruiting study population comparing with vaccinated individuals. We concepted the study. But the other thing I think about is the complexity of measuring comorbidities.
Right.
Because what they're looking at is the effects of other previous health conditions on what happens to COVID disease and COVID vaccination. But then there's the question of, do people who've had COVID have additional or different risks with other conditions, like this is next to Alzheimer's? And sort of the complexity, it's like the chicken and the egg. How do you design a piece of research that tries to answer questions about what's responsible for what?
There are statistical friends who are pulling apart these different bits. It's challenging.
Is anybody working on research where you're trying to figure out that kind of sort of when two things are associated, what's causing is one causing the other, is the other causing one? Everybody else comes with that.
It's not necessarily cause, but we do that in Thailand. So we have a list of existing medical conditions of these individuals at this worksite wellness program. And what we do is we have a platform that is estimating the impacts of these different chronic medical conditions on the health and productivity of these workers, and which ones are contributing most towards loss of productivity and which ones are most prevalent in the workforce. Holy cow, there's a lot there. As you can probably not, teasing it apart is really challenging. And so that has done some of that work in low income housing populations, looking at different existing medical conditions. I can't remember for Pacific Crest and like how many they commonly have together, but it's rare that you have like one. Sometimes like individuals have these conditions that will be persisting across, and like a lot of the commonalities are related to inflammation. And I'm a super sucker for inflammation. I will put my cards on that table and probably die on that grave of inflammation being a really important pathological function.
I was just thinking one thing to his point about having a control group that has COVID and not the vaccine is access to healthcare, because folks who don't have access to healthcare aren't getting the vaccine, or maybe they have COVID, but they don't ever get a formal diagnosis. It would be really hard to recruit from that group. Like, I think it's needed, but it seems really challenging to recruit from that group.
But teasing apart this, I mean, it's no small thing. So this is where a lot of the research is going, and how to use machine learning and other bits to really probe at these things, because each of us asking these individual things, it's really challenging.
So the complexity of analyzing the data.
Accessing
Interested
consistent
in
across.
computer work, have a whole range of exciting tasks to do around how we get.
I'm getting super sucked in. So I have no experience in machine learning at all. I will put that on the table of like how we can use AI and mathematics processing machine learning to analyze the data that we are having. But what makes me excited is that, you know, we are learning with quantum computing that's coming out, is that they're not able to, meaning people who, computers who are analyzing the data, are able to analyze so much faster and complex data sets than, and they're doing it so quickly. So part of it becomes is like, well, as researchers, how do we set up our data sets so they're going to be able to be analyzed down the road by AI and use that? I think that we are at the precipice of that. By this. Right. So what other questions, comments? Okay, so our last presentation of this morning is awesome. Sorelia.
I'm Sophia Flores. I will be talking to you about research that I am working on, especially with Dr. Francis Luton. And the title of the research is Raising Awareness in Health Experience of Older African diagnosed with cervical cancer as screening inequities. So, what is cervical cancer? Cervical cancer is cancer in the cervix. As you can see, the cervix is including the uterus and the vagina. It is mainly caused by the human coronavirus, and it's a sexually transmitted disease. And cervical cancer can actually be prevented by receiving regular patient tests and with the HPV vaccine and pregnancy. I would like to highlight that just because you do have the HPV vaccine or you may not be sexually active, you are still at risk for getting cervical cancer. So there are two screening tools that detect whether you have HPV or cervical cancer. There's the HPV test, which detects for all viruses, and that may cause cervical, vaginal, and uterine cancers. There's also the PAPS test, which is the watching tool for cervical cancer. It detects not only cervical cancer, but pre-cancer and subchanges that may become cancer. So within the last few years, there has been a decrease in deaths and new cases due to more women receiving regular pap smears and due to the vaccine. Cervical cancer is a highly preventable disease. However, Latina women are falling through the cracks. Latina women are disproportionately affected. In 2019, the rate of cases for 100,000 women was 9.7%, and compared to white women, it was 7%. So our research aims are to access unique experiences among middle to older Latina women diagnosed with cervical cancer and examine the different social determinants that may be impacting cervical cancer screening and prevention, because there is minimal studies on this. So our methods and approach, we are using the DIPEX methodology, which is a database of individual patient experiences. We have a diverse sample using the maximum variation approach, and we are acquiring complex stories that have to do with 60 to 90-minute audio and video interviews. And we also have an active stakeholder advisor community. And once we get these audios and videos, we transcribe them, crop them, and edit them. And then we upload them to our website, which is the Health Experiences Research Network. And pretty much the HER website is an international network that is committed to implementing the diagnosis methodologies. And as of right now, there are 4 live modules, and sooner or later ours will be also on there. Pretty much there is a bunch of posts on there. We cross them, put them on the website so the public can see. And also interested, the website is right there. You guys want to see more what the website looks like. It's amazing. Yes. And so the key part of the DIPEX method is dissemination. We pretty much want to share to the public of what the experiences are of these patients. So we want, hopefully, our next step is to share the stories and create on the website, and then create some tool could be useful for medical providers and hopefully write a blog and possibly a policy. And present living forms and share widely. So our accomplishments so far are these. More recently, we have interviewed 5 participants, and I actually have developed a coding tree, and I have cleaned and reviewed all transcripts. Yes. And we officially launched in March of 2002, and we are currently enrolling participants. So if you know anyone that identifies as a Latino woman, is 45 and older, and was diagnosed with cervical cancer after 2012, they are eligible and they will be compensated with $100 for their time. And if you want to, I mean, if you know anyone, please feel free to the picture.
Yeah, is it okay?
Contact info is up there. And I also have flyers if you guys want. Acknowledgements, I would like to thank Build Exito for the state Women's Health and Research Unit at Richard U. My PI, Estela Vázquez, Dr. Estela Vázquez Guzman, Dr. Eric Trell, Ashley Price, Warren Basper, Federico Bento Torres, and Ana Carmen. And any questions?
I want someone to ask first. So what questions do you have? So.
I'm more curious about that website that the stuff to be uploaded, and then how do providers, like, what does the outreach look like so that people know that exists and that they can go through these forms?
Well, pretty much, I believe, we share the website with like every participant as well. And I'm not really sure what my PA is doing to like let everyone know like how to distribute that URL, but I don't know if you may know.
I do. I have a secret crush on this group, so bias alert. So this group is international, and it was formed because there is this physician in the UK who's like, I have breast cancer. There's nothing for me to describe what this experience is like. Where is this information? And she's a medical provider. So, and long story short is they developed, this is a multi-site public information place where you can get information about what is this lived experience with these really important diseases and conditions. So like depression in young adults, PTSD in veterans. So like I have chills just talking about it right now. So like as we're kind of moving forward with this, it's like, how can we crowdsource what it's like to have these different conditions, and how do we publicly share this information with others so they can know it? So that her website, the DIPAX methodology, is the bomb. It is awesome. So keep that on your radar, or if you're like, and they also have all of these, so if you wanted to do subsequent analyses, they actually have that, so you can then start to go through some of these transcripts. You're like, I'm gonna be analyzing something.
Can you go back to that page?
Oh, yes, for sure.
So 9 yeah. That's the
Or the other one?
pictures, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's the one. Yes.
I actually created that.
Yay!
And also you said you have flyers for your study, do you also have flyers for the website information for the network?
I don't.
I would also ask that.
But yeah, the website,
Sorry,
I did put the website, just in case you guys wanted to see what the website looks like.
Right now, there are 4 live modules out there, and I think so far, there's like 6 in the process, so ours is one of them.
And if you are a qualitative researcher, they are hiring folks right now to engage them and people who can like, oh, crap, we have an extra ton of qualitative research happening right now. We need some additional hands on the ground to analyze this. So that's a resource. And
Yes. Yes.
So my question is about qualitative aspect. I know that you said that you did a coding tree.
Yes.
I would love if you can talk about that. More.
Yes, pretty much. So we, as I said, we interviewed 5 participants. And so pretty much what I did is I went back to the audios, listened to the audios. I also looked at the transcripts. And pretty much what I also go to the interviews, by the way, so I'm there taking notes. And based on everything that they say, I pretty much create pretty much topics on like what they mostly what was consistent between like each interview. And as of right now, I think we have like 23 so far, like codes that we have. Yeah, and it's like, I mean, there's a lot that could be put out there. I mean, it's really impactful. I feel like listening to these interviews, like I go home and I'm like, wow, like I still think about these interviews and I'm like, just wanting to like, I created that like right away, 'cause, you know, it's sort of right fresh in my mind. I started on that, yeah, but
Are you using any kind of software or just?
as of right now, no, because we're just getting started on this, but I believe my PI is applying to more grants. And I believe I will be coding or using MPO. So, yeah.
Question.
So Brandy and then Aaron.
Okay, I'm wondering if any of your participants have cited childcare or lack of transportation as reasons.
As of right now, no, because most of our participants are on the older side. So when they did get diagnosed, their children were, pretty old, so they were older in age. So no, but I know that is a factor of why women don't decide to get screened sometimes.
I wonder about the connection between the codes. So as you're coding, you're listening to multiple interviews, you're figuring out phrases or themes that many of them have in common. So it becomes a snapshot of sort of what are the critical issues or the critical language around these experiences. I wonder that the connection between those codes and on the one hand, provider education, and on the other hand, policy education. So as an example, policy education, HPV is linked to cancer. It's a sexually transmitted disease that affects multiple organs in the United States, and that cannot get vaccinated for HPV, even though it causes a lot of cancer. So that's a policy education question. A provider education question, for instance, there's a population of resident services. They often don't disclose, but it's almost impossible for them to get out of school care. So that's provider education. Here are things that come up. You're working with a specific population, older Latino, like there's a population that has they're different than target risk. How do you think about it as you're doing work and figuring these codes that we might identify? What are the factors that matter most? How do you think about connecting that information either to care providers or to codes?
Well, I think about it a lot because we actually, in our interviews, we ask questions like those. Like, well, we ask questions like, oh, like, what could your provider do more, to the participant? Or what do you wish your provider would have done different? Or even like their treatment experiences or their diagnosis experiences, like how the doctor came into the room and told you like that you had cervical cancer. And there was a lot of cases where women like didn't like the way that they told them. So yeah.
How would you want that information? You're in a research study that's gathering this information. What would you want to see built to connect that information back?
Yeah, I think that is important. Well, my PI is she's a professor for medical students, so I know her research is so important because I know she put it out there for medical students. So I feel like that's a way to like change future positions. Right now, I think just putting this research on the website. I think the website is super helpful for physicians to look at and see what difference they can make. Yeah.
So comment and another question. So the comment is like, so HPV is one of these classical examples of a vaccine just being promoted wrong in terms of like, it was billed as sexually transmitted, not as a cancer vaccine. So folks are like, oh, my child is not sexually active, therefore they do not need this vaccine. So it's been a really interesting consideration around uptake and health promotion that of course aligns with this cancer bit, and also that, you know, boys and girls are eligible, individuals of all genders, not even gender binary, are eligible for this vaccine to prevent really important cancer. So anyway, it's just a fascinating story just in itself, just that little part. But my question for you is like, you are going through cancer interviews. So as you've been going forward, what have you learned about, you know, like culturally informed practices for interviewing and how you, like, it is emotionally charged to go through that. So like, how do you as a researcher balance that emotional charge that you're learning from all this and like hope to do it the next day and all those bits? So like, you know what I mean? Though? Like, I don't know exactly how I'm wording this question, but what have you learned about like trauma-informed interviewing? And what would you recommend for newer researchers getting interested in really emotionally significant topics?
I feel like really connecting with the participant. Well, as we come in, we greet them. I also try to talk a little bit about myself and like my cultural background. I think just making a connection is so important. Also, to make them feel comfortable. Because I think if they're not comfortable, they're not going to be honest with you, and they might not say, you know, their full true story. So yeah, I think just making that connection with them is so important.
Has it been emotionally hard to hear these stories?
Yes, because I feel like it's like it's yeah, because I feel like, you know, it's like, oh, this could be my mom, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, it's very impactful for sure. Like it opens your mind, like, and it's just like different perspectives. Because everyone goes through like different things.
Thank you so much.